That's where I met Bobby Meeks and Ben Bruce, Devin Walsh in Alaska. I would go film in MacDoug, and then it'd be snowing again, and we'd ride together. He had put a crab leg in my backpack. You can't get really rich unless you screw someone over. I gave him laxative tea. Hey, you gotta come. They're bleeding everywhere. And I was like, I'm a dad. I can't really die right now. There's like a feeling in your stomach when you're about to like hit a jump or do something that doesn't feel right. And whenever I don't listen to it, that's when I get hurt.
1, 2, 3, 4.
He's no one, she's no one, we're no one.
So again, hey, welcome to the CoPro podcast, and it's a CoPro stands for collective progression. That's one of our core tenets here at Nemo Design, and we think that ideas are better together rather than just by yourself. And what we really want to do with this podcast is interview people that influence culture, and where we think that happens is through athletes, artisans, musicians, entrepreneurs. Those type of creative folks really help guide what culture ends up being. What's been really interesting is watching as I talk to people about the podcast is how many people just said, oh, you got to get Wille Yli-Luoma on the show. It's like, okay, got you here. I know sometimes you're a reluctant hero, but I know that we've had some great conversations, and I'm sure that some great stuff will come out of today's conversation. And so what I hope to do on this journey today is take us all the way from Turku, Finland, all the way to Portland. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to end up talking about how snowboarding and how all those skills can translate into entrepreneurship. And I'm really super curious on how you started your brand and what you think about branding. And so we'll get there and go there. But today I got a visual cue for those at home. They should come onto the YouTube and see what we got going here. This is my Finnish outreach, and we'll see what he says about it. But for those at home, I don't know what these guys are, but maybe you do. Tell me more about Moomin.
Moomin. You know, it's Finnish writer who came up with the characters. She is Swedish speaking, I believe, and she lives on an island. And there is an island outside of Naantali that is like a Moomin island where you can go meet these characters.
It's like Disneyland for Moomin?
Yeah. But it's really funny because everyone thinks it's like from Japan.
But they have one in Japan too, don't they?
Not that I'm aware of.
They do.
They do?
Yeah, it's so popular. They love it in Japan.
But it's like, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, this is Japanese thing. I'm like, no, that's Finnish.
Maybe the Japanese kind of borrowed from that culture and brought it over there, and that's what...
I think there's like some similarities from Japanese and Finnish sometimes, but yeah, definitely Finnish.
Is that something you grew up with or not?
Yeah, I used to watch it when I was like 6 on TV.
So now we got you as a 6-year-old in a small town.
We lived in a place called Merimasku. That was outside of Naantali, which is about 30 minutes from Turku, where I was born.
So I didn't butcher the name too bad. Turku. So port city, about 200,000 people.
Yeah.
Mom and dad?
Yeah, what about them?
They're always our first mentors, yes?
Yeah.
And I know that...
I mean, I was the youngest kid, so I have three big sisters, and there's a 9-year gap. I think my parents were pretty tired by the time I was born, so I could get away with doing a lot of stuff. Yep.
And that's your mom, and what's her name?
Pirkko.
Pirkko? Beautiful. Until she's tired, and now you pick up a skateboard.
Yeah, that was like, my first skateboard was Donald Duck skateboard.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
My dad brought it back from the States. When he was
Your dad was a professor, or?
Yes.
Yep.
He was on a work trip in the States, and he brought that back to me. I think I was 9 when I got it.
All right.
And that kind of just started it. From there on, I never put it down. It was just all I would do is go skateboarding every day. I'd leave the house 8 a.m. and come home like 10 p.m. And I don't know how my mom and dad allowed me to do that, but I was allowed to do that at age 9.
Well, that's probably something else we could talk about, because we'll get to your kids, but on helicopter parenting, and obviously that's the absence of helicopters and kids just using their imagination.
Yeah.
and how it can lead to other things and success in their lives because of the independence that you learn. So thank you for letting you do that. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it terrifies my wife when I tell her stories about my childhood. Just like how free I was to do things. But I also think that where I grew up, in Finland and Sweden, those towns were much safer than these places. I think it was very common for a kid to go at age 10 to take a bus into the city and do whatever and come back home. I feel like here people get shocked when you're like, what? They're taking a bus? What? How old are they?
Or as a parent, you get judged, and
Yeah.
that's, I think, even harder or worse, probably for the whole.
Well, here also, like, the public transportation here is like, it's not nice. Like, it's kind of like everyone prefers driving if they can drive.
Mhm.
Versus there, I feel like people are like, oh, I'm going to take the bus or the train because it's easier and I don't have to worry about parking. And so it's very common to use the public transportation. And that kind of makes it a little bit nicer usually. And I don't know.
Yeah, no, like in the city, in New York City, kids just take the train and take the bus, and that's how they get to school, and there's an independence that happens. And then I did look up the statistics, and it's much safer. And then maybe it's because the kids are always in a car, but again, we don't have the psychos on the roads as we used to that would abduct kids, and maybe that got out of trend. I don't know, but I think there's some truth to that as well. I think a kid is pretty proficient by the time you're 8 or 9 years old, be able to get around their own town.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate to have parents that were supportive of my interest.
That's a great thing. Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
No.
How many languages do you speak?
I speak Finnish, Swedish, and English.
And what's Finnish all about?
What is it all about? It's related to Hungarian. It's a very difficult language, and I think it's not a language you want to learn at an older age. Like if you want to learn Finnish, you want to do it young. I know friends, people that try to learn Finnish at a later stage in the 30s or 40s, and it's quite difficult.
Did you teach your kids when they're little, or?
Me, I'm going to get yelled at right now. I didn't teach my kids speak Finnish.
Nope. Hey, there's no judgment on this end.
Yeah.
But there's like, and I've heard it on different videos, and it's really hard to kind of figure out. Like with the Romantic languages like Italian and Spanish, you can kind of go through it, and you can kind of feel the cadence to it, but there just seems to be a different cadence to it that it's hard to figure out. Are they done talking?
Yeah. I mean, I think to me it's logical. Everything you write, you sound it out.
Right.
If there is two A's, it's a long A, and one A, it's a short A. And, like two I's means a long I, one I, a short I. So, and if there's something that's like kukka, there's two K's and not a CK. Like there's those tricky things in English where you like have these hidden letters that you do not pronounce, but they're in there.
So frustrating.
Yeah.
I love those guys on TikTok that kind of try to illustrate it. So it's there, and then leaf, and yeah. What were those guys thinking?
I mean, I still struggle with that. So
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Imagine that. But then there's the other one is sauna or sauna.
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 Yeah, it's sauna. There's no sauna. Sauna.
And then is it, again, I understand the Finns play it hot and dry when they do the sauna. Is the round one better than the room one? Like,
Well, I mean, what do you mean by dry? I mean, you always throw water on the rocks.
Mhm.
That's just the way it is. If someone tells you different, then that's not a sauna.
somebody sounds like they know what they're doing on a sauna. Give me a lesson. I know you yelled at me when I was going through my experience buying a sauna, and I didn't call you up, and I should have, but
Well, I think it's like gotten really popular over the years. I don't know, was it because of COVID? People were like, oh, I can't go anywhere, so I'm going to build something at home. And, we finally built one too, which is
Oh.
very late for considering that, I'm from Finland. I should have had one a long time ago. But yeah, there's a lot of kits that are not properly designed and don't work properly, but people need to make money, and so people cut corners and they sell you stuff that it's not actually properly designed.
So the round ones are they okay? Like what's
basically you think about the heater in a sauna,
Yeah.
where the rocks are. That should not be above your feet,
Why?
because then your feet are cold.
Okay.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah.
But they put it up high so you don't burn your feet, so you don't hit it accidentally. Is that why it's engineered that way?
No saunas in Finland have it that way.
Where's the heater in the sauna in Finland?
It's just a little bit off the floor, like this much.
Do they use electric, or is it gas, or is it wood? Like,
There's different kinds.
Sure.
You can use fire. The original ones were wood fired.
right?
A lot of people use electric ones these days, but you're supposed to have a gap between the door and you go in there, so you have air coming in, fresh air coming in, and then you have a vent at the top and at the bottom, so you can have air circulating the sauna. So a lot of places here, they don't actually put proper ventilation in them, and so you don't have fresh air coming in, which makes it not comfortable sitting in them. And then they don't get hot enough also. So a couple of things there.
What's the proper temperature?
I mean,
170,
we have ours
160?
set at 184.
184.
Yeah.
30 minutes at 184?
For like sitting in there?
Yeah, here you're supposed to bring your body temperature up 2 degrees, and that's the health
Yeah,
benefit.
I feel like I'm like a 20 to 24 minute sauna person. That's usually like where I hit the spot where I'm like, I don't need to be in here longer.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
But I mean, I'm also probably like the sauna was in our family. Like my family, they will be there in like an hour. So maybe that's why it took me so long to build one, because I was like, of all the years of being sitting around with family members for too long in it.
Well, you bring up another thing too. Again, it's a social thing, or is this like I'm going to the bathroom thing?
Oh, it's a social thing.
All right. You can talk to my daughter about that one. She's like, no, don't come in here. I'm in here. I'm like, you're supposed to sit there and talk and enjoy and have conversation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think it's more of a social thing, definitely. You go to someone's house, usually either men or women go first, but at the party, usually everyone goes, but they have different times, or sometimes they mix them together. It depends on how well you know each other and if you care.
Well, then it brings up the other question: skin or suits?
Skin.
As he says, it's obvious. Duh.
I mean, I think if in a public space, I get it. But yeah, no.
I think when I started traveling with snowboarding, that was my first stupid American thing, is like getting into a sauna for the first time, and then it's like you're naked.
Yeah.
And the girls are naked, and you're like, oh, I saw you at breakfast and thought you were hot, and now you're naked. But the great thing is if you just get over it and just,
that's a part of the
big a
culture
deal.
here. That's
It's
a
an
U.S.
American
culture of like, there's a taboo, and I think that is so bad for kids and people in general. I remember being a waterfront by water fountains down there with Lilu when she was like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3, and I let her run around naked in the water. And this lady comes up to me and is like, hey, my boys are looking at your daughter. Can you put clothes on her? I'm like, she's 3. Like, maybe you should take your boys somewhere else. I'm like, I was so shocked. Like,
Right.
Why are you telling me that I have to put clothes on my 3-year-old? And also, like, this kind of like taboo society brings out creeps, in my opinion.
It makes a creep.
Yeah.
Whereas what you're saying is if you just grow up this way, it just becomes normal.
Yeah.
And you're not as freaked out by naked.
Yeah. Same thing with like drinking. People, try to control it here where you're 21, that you're allowed to drink, but you can drive a car, something that weighs thousands of pounds and can kill people at 16. Makes no sense to me at all. It's like, how is this even like, how's there logic in this?
I love the melting pot.
Yeah.
And it is these new ideas that makes us all think, and it can be better.
I think those are things that are big things that influence the country in lots of ways,
Mm-hmm.
Like TV here, you can show all kinds of guns, but you can't show boobs.
They're dangerous. Boobs are dangerous. Come on.
Like, I don't know.
There's like a First Amendment for speech. Maybe there should be a First Amendment for boobs. I don't know.
I mean, it just like doesn't make sense, but whatever. There's a lot of good things, that I'm still living here, but I'm just
Obviously.
saying.
Yeah, and we'll get into that journey and how you got here too. And it's like, and in building brands too. Is like your skateboarder. I mean, how did you even find a snowboard, and what is the snowboarding like in Finland? And
well, the winters are pretty rough. It's cold, and this is dark, and you can't skateboard unless there's indoor skate parks. But when I was a kid, there's no indoor skate parks. So, I would not skateboard for several months, and that was torture. And so we would either go to a friend's garage and do like stuff inside the garage at that time, but you can only skate so much in this small space. And so at some point we got those, like, I think it was like black snow or something, I don't know what.
No way.
Like boards, and
Yeah.
it was just like trying to just ride down any hill. Like,
so that factory was about 3 hours from where I grew up.
really?
Yeah, small world. We're connected.
So that's how it kind of started, but then I went into actually skiing with my sister and her husband. They took me to some resorts, and I was skiing for I think I was like 10 or 11 years old, and I was skiing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, I want to snowboard. I see people on snowboards. I'm like, why am I on these things? Like, I don't want to ski. I don't want to have ski poles. Like, I didn't like the idea of having poles in my hand, and I even stabbed myself on accident one time, like trying to hit a jump, and then somehow the ski pole came in front of me and like hit me in the stomach, and I just flew over, and I was like, oh, I hated it.
Good answer. And then there was a rental board. Like, was there a shop over there?
At the time, we lived in Savonlinna, which is like, you can look it up. It's pretty close to Russian border, east, like center east in Finland.
And so you grew up south, so closer to the coast, and then
Yeah,
I'm
we
sure
moved
the
up.
northern.
We moved up there for my dad's work,
Okay.
and that's where, when I was 12, I bought a Sims Blade 51 from someone. And
1500.
was it 1500?
Was it like black swallowtail?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That must have been hard to get over there.
I bought that, and then I had some Sorel boots.
That's how you begin.
Yeah.
And then there's how big are the hills or mountains in?
That hill was, I can't remember how big it was, but it's not big. It's just small. And I got so into snowboarding there. That's all I wanted to do every day after school. Let's go snowboarding. And then summertime, I would just dream about, like, when can we go snowboarding? And it used to be the opposite, where I used to be like, oh, when can I skateboard again? But now it was that, snowboarding was like what I wanted to do all the time. So I would like skateboard still, but it was not as exciting to skateboard for me at that point anymore.
And then there was that whole movement of the scanners coming over, doing all the filming with MacDog, and really kind of setting the pace for what was snowboarding. And you were part of that movement. and really building your own personal brand as a snowboarder, because you got in at the early days with Forum 8.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely had some, made conscious decisions about what apparel brand you wanted to wear and represent, and were thoughtful about it. So tell me more about that movement, and we'll get it into the Forum 8 days.
Like, which part?
Pick the good ones. What's going to entertain the people at home?
So I got my first free board when I was 15 from Ami.
No way.
It was Hammer Snowboards. If you remember.
So there's Matt Hammer. It's not the same.
No.
I don't even remember Hammer.
It's like a French company.
Okay.
At the time, Ami and Yoni, and both Yonis were riding for him. And then, like, maybe 6 months later, Ami started riding for Silent Snowboards.
Oh, yeah.
And then he talked to Romy, the team manager, and it was like, hey, we should get this kid on Silence too. And then they started sending me snowboards. And then I went to Verbier in the summer.
Verbier.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Switzerland.
Yep. That's where I met a bunch of Americans, Bobby Meeks and
okay.
Just Ben Bruce. That was
wow.
He was the Airwalk team manager at the time, and
okay,
we hit some jumps and snowboarded every day up there. And Ben was like, "Hey, I'll buy you a ticket to US if you wear Airwalk outerwear and boots." And so I was like, "Okay." And he bought me a plane ticket to US, one-way ticket, which is not also okay for a non-American to customs. But on top of it, he spelled my name Willie and my last name Thornton, which is my team manager's name, Romy Thornton. And so somehow I convinced the airline that it was me, and they let me fly with this ticket.
Love it. Breaking rules right away.
And as we get into US, Ami is like, hey, by the way, you can't come in the States with a one-way ticket, so you have to have like a ticket back. So just like make up a day and say that you have a ticket for this day. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like so nervous. I'm like, what do I do? And so we get to customs line, and I'm standing there, and I'm like sweating, and I'm just probably red in my face. And it's my turn, and all of a sudden something happens. One of the custom agents comes up to the lady who's about to ask me questions, like, hey, you got to come. They're bleeding everywhere. And I was like, and then they're just like, they just stamped my passport, like, go ahead. And I was like, okay.
No way.
And so then I got in, and that was it. And I went to Mount Hood, and that's kind of how it all started.
Breaking the rules right away. I like it. And then we got the Hood. You're with Bobby Meeks, of all people. And there was, what really makes me curious is, like, what was the Forum 8 all about?
Well, they wanted to get together the best possible snowboarders and make a team, kind of like, a good basketball team or whatever. Just they were like, we're going to pick the best possible riders out there. And I think it was like really geared towards like freestyle snowboarding.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on that team, can you just name drop for me?
Do I really have to?
Just curious.
I mean, JP, Jeremy, Peter, Devin, Yoni, BJ, myself, Christopher.
And so why do you think the industry was ready for something new like Forum? Obviously, there's established brands, and they make good boards, and they're good prices, like a Burton.
Well, there's like when I got sponsored, I felt like this isn't going to last. Like, It was like, I felt like everyone was getting sponsored.
Okay.
You know what I mean? There's like a boom in the industry, and so many people were getting free snowboards and free stuff, and it's kind of like, how's this even work? How's this even like possible? And I think because so many people were sponsored and teams were big, I think there was like a lot of noise of like, how do you stand out in that crowd? of all these companies of like if you have all the riders, but like even if you have the best riders, I mean, if there's too many riders if you always like.
So
try to
what year
market
is
a
this?
team. This is like
90.
99, 98, 99.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think Forum, there's also like Special Blend, Foursquare.
The whole package.
Yeah. So they started off with Special Blend and Foursquare, and there was a vision there already of how to market these brands, and I loved the Special Blend outerwear, and I always wanted to be on that team when I was younger, but I ended up getting on Foursquare. And so Peter asked me to start writing that for them, and I was as happy. It just was like a different brand, like Peter's brand of kind of similar as Special Blend, but different.
And that's Peter Line, right?
Yeah, and so then you have Peter Line and Ingemar Backman and Chad Arström and myself, and I just felt like, how can I say no?
There you go.
Yeah.
And then there was marketing at that time. Video was one of the most important tools.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was great because that's what I love to do, be in the backcountry, shoot with friends, just like a couple of people out, and that's kind of what I was into.
Life's good.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong.
I mean, it was good until, you always have these hiccups, and I think that team was like, it was good right off the bat, but then also the people running it was kind of like turning people against each other in a way of like, well, they're getting shots today. What'd you get today?
Oh, interesting. Tell me more.
Well, there was like this culture of like, of going out to film. There would be like sharing information throughout the company where the team manager would call like, oh, so I heard JP and German when filming, they got this and this trick. What did you and Yanni get today? And I'm like, so there's like instant like pressure of like pushing of like, you gotta step up. And I think that was the first time in snowboarding when I was like, oh fuck, I don't like this.
Oh.
Like, this is like not why I'm here.
It's funny. Like I was shooting in my prime. We were on the Burton shoots, and I always bring the alphas in. Zacher and Curtis and VNA and Gallup, and we'd all end up in the same resort, and then you kind of have to get assigned your team, part of their team, and then it was the same conversation at dinner. Like, but it felt competitive, but I never felt like it was unhealthy, because everybody was pushing, trying to get the best shit they could.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I think there is like, I think it's healthy to share all that stuff, and there's a healthy way of doing it. I think the way it was presented to me and Yanni wasn't healthy, and then there was like trying to push, like put pressure on us. And
so what you do about it?
I locked up.
Bam.
I just like didn't. It was like I was performing worse and worse and worse because of it.
No way.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Obviously, I don't tell people that, and you want to try to hide it, and you have to try to figure out how do I get back into it. But when I got a chance to get off the team from K2, it was kind of like an easy out. I was like, this is not what I want to be doing. I want to snowboard again for myself. It's a weird way to say for myself, but it just felt like I could be myself again.
What a great opportunity. And then on that program, so now we're what, 2001?
2000 I got put on K2.
K2. And,
Yeah.
and who's the team manager then?
Blue Montgomery.
There's
Yeah.
a name
Yeah.
from the past. And then there's, wasn't that the time too, they're starting to push that clicker system?
I never did. I never went there, but probably, I mean, I think they might have actually kind of pulled back right when they put me on, because I think Blue was like, hey, we got
to get legit here.
Yeah.
It wasn't working.
But
Well, Engelsman took the heat on that, didn't he? Like, yeah. All right.
Yeah, I think that was Engelsman was the one pushing that a lot.
But that brings up the next brand opportunity too, I think, where we had the opportunity to connect too is in robot food.
Yeah.
Tell me about, again, I always saw that as, again, a collective progression experiment and gone well.
Mhm.
And I think the whole team of crew that you guys put together really resonated well for the audience and just for snowboarding in general. I think that really was the pace and it was the culture of snowboarding for that era.
Mhm.
How did it work? Why did it work?
I mean, I think it's kind of a similar situation. There's a lot of ways to film a snowboard video, and I think all of us were kind of not in line with the companies that were or production companies we were filming with, and we wanted to do music differently. We wanted the look to be slightly different, and I think most of us were on the same page, and we could get along. And I would see UC, for example, after he would film with Standard, at the resort, we would like connect and ride together, and then we go. It'd be a powder day, sunny day. He would go film. I would go film in MacDog, and then it'd be snowing again, and we ride together at Squaw. So, which is not Squaw anymore. It's called Palisades.
There you go.
Yeah. It's one of those things like, why are we like not filming the same people instead?
Right.
Yeah.
And then we had some Meeks in there. We had some Travis Parker in there, and then Pierre and Gibby, and really it was this, the chemistry that you guys put together.
I mean, I think everything started out with like, I think the first year was definitely magic. I think there's a lot of like.
What movie was that one?
Afterbang?
Are you sure?
Yeah.
It was Afterbang.
Yeah. You got me there for a second. I was like, what? No, yeah. Yeah.
I told you to know all the answers.
Yeah.
But yeah. Afterbang, great movie. I think it was my favorite part for years in snowboarding.
I mean, I think it was like very playful. It was like there's some seriousness, but really it was just like mostly just like it was like everyone got a time of like kind of got to breathe it a little bit, and I think that brings out more like creative snowboarding, and also just it ends up enhancing the performance because you're not like, I don't know, there's like less of a crazy production in a way.
And there's you can't fake laughs and interactions, and you can tell that on the in-between takes on that movie. And it's funny to watch movies after that try to replicate it and just, I think, feeling awkward and clumsy. I do feel too that the trick, spin, 18, how far do we go? I think that bringing it back and showing a professional kind of goofing around was very relatable to a whole nother audience, and really brought a whole new group of people in that said, oh, I can snowboard too, because it's fun. Again, you don't have to be doing 900s, getting upside down, almost killing yourself to have fun snowboarding. It just go out, do it with your friends. I think really that's what that movie represented for a lot of people.
No, I think it was like the start of like, who are we trying to connect with? Like,
Simple.
Yeah.
Know your audience.
Yeah.
Know your audience. What's your favorite part in any of those?
Favorite part? I mean, I don't know. I think one of my favorite days was like actually with Bobby Meeks in Sonora Pass.
Okay.
If you have Bobby Meeks here, has he done this?
Should he?
Yeah.
All right, let's get him on the show.
He can tell you the day better, probably, because he has a different version of it. But we had like, just a wild long day of filming in Sonora Pass, and then driving from Sonora Pass to San Francisco, and the way watching a cow give birth on the side of a road, and then going to meet up with one of his friends to go into a burlesque show in the city, and just like the combination of different things that happened that day, seeing some army guys train in the mountains, middle of nowhere, and then just being like, how can we just experience all this in one day? This is kind of crazy. Yeah.
And speaking of crazy experiences, I hear you're a prankster. Snowmobile pranks, maybe? Am I tapping on something here?
Depends on what you're talking about.
You're going to take the fifth on me, aren't you?
Is this coming from Gibby?
Maybe.
I mean, I think, for example, me and Bobby and Neil, there's some few people that would play pranks on each other all the time, yes.
What would happen with one of your pranks?
What would happen? I mean, I don't know. They're pretty gross, to be honest with you. I don't know if we should talk about
It's
them.
not for kids to hear.
I mean,
I haven't heard what the pranks are, to be
mean,
honest.
There's like the earliest prank that Bobby did to me was like, I got my first free Dragon outerwear, like, goggle backpack. And I was excited, I was in Rick's Grandson. And a couple of days later, I'm like, what is that smell? Like, what is this smell so bad? And I was like, trying to smell everywhere in the room, and then it's like, it's my backpack. And I'm like, what? And as I open it, and he had put a crab leg in my backpack. And he just like had run in there, and I had to throw the backpack away. And I feel like that just like was like, okay, you just like,
Game on.
yeah.
Game on. It's
So,
Bobby's fault.
No, but it was just like, I don't think I ever pranked with anyone as much as with Bobby.
And then kind of getting into, coffee, I heard there was a John Cooley tea that you were famous for.
That was Bobby and John Cooley, yes. I mean, that was one of the pranks. I gave him laxative tea.
Friend of yours?
Yeah, I mean, they were like, hey, I was like, do you guys want tea? And they're like, whoa, you let's make this tea? I'm like, yeah, you guys want some tea? And it's pretty funny being in a chairlift, watching Bobby hold his stomach and like beelining straight to the bathroom at Mount Hood.
You're a dick.
I mean, you don't quite know the details of what happened before, so there's a lot of different things that led up to it.
That sounds like a whole movie right there.
I mean, imagine waking up at night and being like very itchy and trying to figure out what's going on. You look at a pillow and you realize that Bobby has collected his fingernail and toenail clippings in a film jar and doused your pillow all over, and you're sleeping in all that. So
Friends of
I don't
yours,
know
right?
which one do you think is worse.
Yeah, okay, you got a point there. How do I transition from there? Okay, making movies your favorite part. I think the music you guys picked was really different, especially kind of, no diss on Standard and what they were doing, but again, you just kind of came at it from a whole different point of
I mean, I
view.
think it's like that younger generation, right? You have like, I think it happens with anything. There's a point where there's a disconnect with the people that are picking the music to your audience.
Yep.
And I think we were, and just a new generation of kids that wanted to have a different, music.
And again, with what a great opportunity to live that lifestyle as a professional snowboarder and an athlete. And I think it's a big part of the DNA of who you are today. But also there's pivots in our lives and things change. And I think I remember hearing a story about, and I haven't experienced this with you, because I remember pulling you off of some rocks at Baker, and I'm like, don't jump it, it's too flat. And you're like, psycho guy, like, I can do it. And you just go flying off it. But I think there was also checks in your brain as well. As like, I'm not going to hit that jump. I'm heel side. I could get hurt.
Yeah.
Because obviously the game gets higher and more difficult and more dangerous as you elevate in your snowboard career. We end up in Alaska and things get sketchy, and there's a pivot. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for most of my career, I didn't really I would just imagine doing something and I'll just do it. And I wasn't too worried. And I try not to think of the consequences if something goes wrong. I mean, obviously, you have to run through some things, like what if this happens? So what do I do in that situation? But you don't want to think too much about it, too, because then that might actually happen. So you don't want to,
Yeah.
create that.
It's like if you're looking at the tree, you're going to hit the tree,
Yeah.
right?
So that never was really a problem until I think later in some of my career when I was like, I'm a dad. I can't really die right now. And there's like, a few close calls in Alaska, and it's just like, why am I doing this? But I do remember like, there are a few times when I'm just like, I'm not gonna do this because I just don't think it's worth it. And one of them was with Devin Walsh in Alaska. He got the cover shot of I think Andy Wright shot the photo, jumping over like a valley, like a little, not valley, a gully, and there's like a rock face, and I was like, it's not that big of a jump, but if your angle is off 5 degrees, you're gonna hit a rock fall. And for me to come in on a heel side, full speed into that, if I'm just off a little bit, I'm not gonna make it, and I'm gonna hit rocks. Not like I'm actually gonna go physically straight into rocks. So I was like, I'm not gonna do this. And I watched him get a cover, and I was happy for him. But it was like one of those moments, and I was like, I don't always have to do things. But then also like when that happens, I think it's kind of something happens in your brain where you're like, at what point do you start feeling like I don't have to do any of this? You know what I mean?
When it's time to change, it's time to rearrange the Brady Bunch.
So I think I hit that point pretty much the year after that, where I was like, I don't need to be doing this anymore.
And then there was the pivot to coffee.
Yeah.
And then there was a trip where you're supposed to go get on a plane to Chile, and there was something calling you in the Netherlands.
Yep. That same thing, like there's like a feeling when you in your stomach when you're about to like hit a jump or do something that doesn't feel right. And so I try to listen to that, and whenever I don't listen to it, that's when I get hurt. Kind of like looking back at all the different times. And I had the same thing as like I'm at the airport with my board bag, and I had this weird feeling in my gut. I'm like, I don't want to go on this trip. And the lady is like, hey, your bag is not going to make it on the next flight. You're too late. Like, it's like you can make the flight, but your bag won't make it. And I was like, I'm just not going to go. And she's like, what? I'm like, And I just turned around, walked away, and then I'm like, went to Netherlands and bought a coffee roaster instead.
What is that?
Well, at this point, we already started like.
So what year are we? What year is this now?
2009.
Okay.
We already had started planning hard, and I already had a coffee roaster, but the roaster I had at the time wasn't the one I wanted, and the one I really wanted there was one in Netherlands, and so instead of going to my K2 photo shoot, I decided to go there. The consequences obviously was, my pay got cut pretty quickly.
And it's almost like you sabotaged, we'll call it the snowboard career, to actually ignite the brand heart.
Yeah. Well, like I luckily, like with Volcom, I was like, hey, I don't want to be in the spotlight. And they're like, Billy was like, amazing. He's like, I'm so happy I don't have to fire you. And he's like, here's a 3-year contract. You get paid less and less every year. Just need to be doing a little bit of stuff. I'm like, okay. So it's kind of like a easy way of getting weaned off the drug, which is the money. And when you're a professional athlete, that's like the hardest transition of going from making a bunch of money to none. So I think that kind of saved my transition was Volcom. They just made it like so much easier, being like, okay, now I'm making this much for this year. Next year I'm going to be even less, so I have to like, having time to make those adjustments instead of making it overnight is huge.
So again, what I've heard too, is gut. And I think that's something that I'd really like to hear more from you on, is just, I think people get these gut feelings and they don't follow them through. And sometimes you really got to follow the gut. And so when do you really listen to it and then actually execute on it?
I try to listen as much as I can. Like, I think what I do for a living right now is, also like when I got into coffee, it was it was a big transition. Like the industry wasn't like, it was in a weird stage. There wasn't a lot of data. The information wasn't like readily available, and also it's like everyone was like going around like, what I'm doing is the best, and like thinking that everyone knows everything, but in reality no one knows anything. They're just going around saying that they know everything. And so slowly this stuff has come to surface over the years, but coming into the industry at that time, I'm kind of like with like open eyes. I'm like, I don't know, I don't have an opinion about this, but I want to learn. And I think that put me at an advantage over a lot of other coffee people that had been taught a certain way and were following those rules.
Why the name Heart?
It came from like just the passion, from obsession over it. We were like, we're going to call it Heart Roasters or Heart Coffee. And we just end up being like, people are going to call it Heart anyway, so let's just call it Heart. And I wanted to have like a timeless logo. So something that, would look, you couldn't tell what year it was from. And that was kind of the idea behind the whole of it. At one point, we did have like anatomical hearts for logo, and I was like, no, we can't do that. It was really cool looking, but it was like, this is going to look weird in a few years.
Good for you. That's a strong statement right there. And you came through with the idea of, or let me back up and go, what does brand mean?
I mean, coming from snowboarding, seeing these companies come and go and how they're marketing them, and having to represent companies and having like photo incentives, like you have a sticker on your snowboard, and then doing snowboard graphics, and then being like, what can you tell from afar away? Like, what is that product? You know what I mean? So I think I came from that idea of like, how can I make a coffee bag that stands up from the shelf, that people know it's our coffee bag without having to be close to it. At the time, there's no white coffee bags, zero in the industry. And so I was like, well, let's make a white coffee bag because no one has it. And then just trying to play around with colors and figure out how can we make it stand out. And I think there's been a lot of similarities coming out later now, but we really haven't changed. We just kept the same idea and with the design and bag look itself. And some people might think it's outdated, but it's like, well, we haven't really changed.
Yeah. So is the Coke bottle. It's pretty old design, but it does represent their brand.
Yeah.
So brand is how to stand out in the customer's mind.
Yeah.
As unique.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is that you want it to be easily recognizable from far away.
And so again, okay, you're wanting to stand out and be unique, but then again, you set up shop in Portland, Oregon, where there's 80 coffee baristas and brewers or bakers, whatever they're called, in our town. Why Portland? And is that a good thing for Heart to be in a competitive landscape, or is that a distraction?
I think it's both. It's a little bit of a distraction because there's too many coffee roasters in this city. And so for wholesale, for selling coffee, it's really hard because someone knows someone that works at some coffee company. And so a lot of these business interactions are based on who do you know. So, like a restaurant or a cafe might like our coffee better, but because one of their friends or whoever owns this other company, they're never going to switch the product. So it makes it sort of like difficult to try to like sell in wholesale, but then again, it makes it easier to stand out because everyone's kind of doing the same thing, and you're just like, I have no interest in doing that. I know what I want, and this is the direction we're going. And so that way it's good for us because we are more unique and stand out here among the other people.
And congrats, you're 15 years into this thing.
Yeah.
Waking
Thanks.
up every day, making it happen. I would love to have another conversation and go through all the experiences, I'm sure, just as an owner of a business that you've gone through, because that's a whole book in itself. But what I wanted to do is kind of move the target a little bit and bring Rebekah into the conversation and talk about collaborations.
Mm-hmm.
I think you guys are a great complement to each other. And again, the idea here is just to talk about how collaborations are better than just working as a solo person.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us it's unique because we work together, but we don't really work together. There's such different parts of the business. You know, I'm part of QC and roasting and working on equipment. So, and then I'm also the one picking up the camera to take photos or talking to people like Neil or Shelby or someone to do videos or images. Same, you know, from my perspective, my job is more fun. I'm sure she is slightly jealous of it, but also, like, I could not do her job. She's great with people. She manages people, and she's also works with HR. So there's like a whole different perspective how the business works because she's there. She's also the more realistic one. I'm always like, we should do this or do that. And she's like, well, we can't afford that right now. I'm like, okay. So she sometimes brings me down, like, from my ideas and what I want to do, which I think is healthy because it keeps us in business.
And it might be, when's this airing, Nick? Like February?
Yeah, middle of February.
So is it too early to talk about some other expensive things that are happening on that we talked about earlier today?
No. I mean,
Because I'd love to plug that.
so, yeah, this is kind of we've been trying to find a building for our roastery for a while, and we lease in a space right now, and leasing is fine. It's just, it's sad when you have to put a lot of energy into the building from your own pocket that someone else owns, and when that lease is up, they get all of it, and I'm kind of sick of doing that. And so we're trying to find a space that would work for us, and it's really hard in Portland where they're so competitive with like real estate, commercial real estate, because most of the contractors end up buying these buildings and then rent them out to people they know. And we had one of it was 20th and Powell or something. We had one that we worked for almost 6 months. We did the whole process, went to get permits and everything, and the bank ended up pulling out last minute because the interest rates went up. And they're like, we don't think you can afford this anymore. And so we lost that. And so it was kind of like, I think it was meant to be.
There you go.
But it was really hard when that happened.
I bet.
Yeah. And so now we found a space which is like off 9th and Belmont, and it's all brewery, Cascade Brewing, and we happen to be the right place, right time, and it's going to be our building.
Yes! So if anybody knows the neighborhood, we're neighbors now. So
Yeah.
again, I drive by that every day.
Yeah, it's like, 11 blocks that way.
Yeah, just walking distance.
Yeah.
So we're always heading that way to get lunch anyway. It's like, great, welcome to the neighborhood. If you need any help, let me know.
Yeah.
Roll up our sleeves. We'll get in there, help you out. Except for the electric. Good luck on that. And Ken, with that, how do you define success?
I think success is kind of balance of everything. Like, are you financially enough stable where you can do things with your family and not have to stress too much? Do you have enough time to spend with your family? Do you have time to do fun things? And I think you're successful. I don't think it can be. Everyone wants to measure it by dollar amounts, and
Welcome to America.
and I think that is, it's a very natural way of like, oh yeah, they're so successful because of this and this, and it's quite frustrating, to be honest with you, because the capitalism is what destroys our society in the first place. But also, it's like we're in it. We can't really not be in it. We have to, and finding a way how to have that imbalance is kind of like, I think that's successful. Looking at people that are really successful from a financial standpoint, they probably screwed someone over to get to that point. You can't get really rich unless you screw someone over.
Imagine that.
So I think it's a strange thing in our society of like putting that as a pedestal of like, he's really successful. It's like, well, either he came from money that was probably stolen from some people at some point, the land, or they have some way of exploiting people in their business, and that's how they become really successful.
So again, it's like, how much is enough?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think for COVID was a great reset, because when we went into COVID, we were on that traditional path of growing, and it was kind of what was like shown to me here. Like, if you're not growing, you're like failing. You know what I mean? That's the kind of mindset. And we couldn't really afford growing, but we were still growing. And so when we had to lay people off during COVID, I like skateboard over to the mailbox. I had a stack of checks to give everyone their last paycheck because we were closing shops and everything. And the roastery, we had like four or five people staying on. It was like $36,000 in like total in checks, and we had $38,000 in our bank account.
Jesus.
That was very stressful, and having 4 leases, I was like, we're gonna be houseless soon, because the landlords are gonna want the money, and they're gonna either liquidate, and we're still gonna owe the money, and it was very stressful. And
I can feel your tension right now.
it was like, there's definitely moments where you're like, okay, well, why are we doing this? Like, what are we even doing? And like, what's the purpose of all of this? And spent a lot of nights and days thinking about that. And when we came back, I was like, I don't want to grow to that size. I want to kind of reel things back a little bit. It was nice having less people work for you. You are more connected to everyone. And so I felt like I got a second chance of starting hard again after COVID and be like, no, this is actually the direction we want to go now. And that was, a silver lining in all of it. And I feel more successful now. Even though the business is not as big, I feel much more successful.
And in part of that success, you can hear that there's some values that you hold and you execute on daily. And it's, again, some of the farms that you work with, I heard you're very fair, paying top market value for the beans that you're bringing in. Ethical.
It's a slippery slope when you start talking about this in ethical in coffee, because there's a lot of marketing around that. People talking about fair trade coffee and putting fair trade stickers, which is like a thing you have to pay money to be able to have that sticker in your bag. But also, like, the fair trade value is not high enough to be, in my opinion, fair trade. So I'm not saying it's not good to have fair trade, but it's just like it's not good. It's not good enough. And for us, working with farmers close enough where we can ask them what they need to make in order to be, have a living and keep producing coffee, because I want to keep buying coffee from them. If I'm trying to negotiate a price that's good for me and not taking them in account, then, what if like next year they can't afford doing it anymore? But I wanted to get it cheap so I could make a better profit. I think when it comes to that quality of coffee, it's like you have to think about the future, not like so much of like just
What can you do for me today?
Yeah. And also like it really, coffee is like it's not the prettiest industry in general. Like, it starts with people exploiting other people. So trying to do as much good as you can while you're doing it makes sense to me. At least I can sleep at night.
I think that's part of the brand of Heart.
Yeah.
Maybe there's more that you can talk about or advertise. I don't know what the word would be, but
I mean, for example, in Honduras, we meet with the producers every year that we work with, and we will talk to them about their production, what it cost, the fertilizer went up, or the pickers wanted more money who would pick the coffee. And then we go like, well, how much do we have to compensate for that, like for the price? So if you look at the trend of our prices buying from Honduras, they've just been going up every year, at least 25 to 50 cents per pound of what we've been buying, which is pretty drastic for some people. And for us, it's just like talking to the producers and being like, what's sustainable? What works for you? Obviously, we have to charge more for the product here. Some people don't like that, and you might not sell as much coffee, but also at the same time, it's like I said earlier, like I don't need to be as big of a company. I just want to do the things that I think like align with myself and Rebekah.
So again, like, what could you tell somebody, young person sitting in front of you today, of what it would take to set up their personal success formula?
For what? Like
Whatever they're doing. Again, it seems like you got good insights into what and good values on setting up. This is success. I don't need to chase somebody else's idea of success.
Well, I think like you have to like what you're doing. It's probably number one. And then money can't be your driver. It has to be part of the equation, but it can't be what drives your business, because then you lose all creativity. I don't know. That's
I like it. And wrapping it up, it's like, where can people reach out and connect with you? Where can we find you?
I don't know. I mean, I guess there's Instagram, but you can, that I'm around Portland.
You can find me in Portland. I'm a shy guy. Go
I
talk
mean,
to my wife.
I'm not really on the love being the spotlight.
I get it.
Yeah.
But again, at the end of the day, we all kind of have to find new revenue sources and turn people on to what we're doing. So
it's hard.
I get it.
It's my least favorite part of it, but it is part of it. And, that's why we have social media. That, I don't know, does it work? Sometimes it seems like it doesn't work.
Again, word of mouth, right? Somebody goes in, has a great experience at your new place down the street. They'll tell a friend who tells a friend who tells a friend, and you get to stay in business another 15 years. And so we're really excited for what you got going and how we can play in the sandbox together. And always like having conversations. I appreciate you always get right down to the brass tacks of things. You're not afraid to pull punches and tell me what you think. Because life's too damn short to be beating around the bush. So, anything you want to leave us with? Last call.
Well, I feel like I dodged a lot of bullets in this. I was like so nervous what was coming up.
Well, you know all the answers. You grossed us out. That's cool.
Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, I'm sure I'll see you around.
Thank you.